Welcome back, everyone, to Stories to D4, and more specifically, our show Footnotes. Hey, it's been a while. We feel like you never come visit anymore. I don't feel like we get as much connection as we used to. Why don't you join us at the table? Let's see what we got going on. Victoria, and of course, this week's guest, Jake. We got a couple fun things to talk about tonight. How you been?
Pretty good. Just busy. Life, work, and I said this last Friday, every day of the week, it feels like when's the next D&D session? Here I am. When's the next Footnotes?
I'd love to run some more games. Maybe in the very near future. Maybe in the very near future. Sorry about that. Technical difficulties. Let me go ahead and put the channel switcher outside of bumping range.
That's fair.
Well, yeah, it's only been a couple days since our last session.
Yes.
But it feels very long. I have so many plans for next week.
Oh yeah. No, definitely. I mean, I just want to play D&D, so whatever you're doing, let me know.
Yeah.
We have some more things coming up in the very near future. Actually, for those of you who are watching, there's a little bar just underneath us. It's right about here. We've had some wonderful support, having some wonderful support here from the community. Lots of folks who've come and subscribed, who've supported us on Patreon. We really appreciate all that support. It lets us get miniatures, terrain, all sorts of goodies for the show to make the adventures a little bit more fun. And we're very close to hitting this goal for our Battlesphere one-shot. The Battlesphere one-shot, we've been talking about player characters, a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes where we're planning that. But once we hit this goal, we're going to set a date, make some big announcements, and pretty soon there's going to be a real high-powered one-shot arena-style combat in the near future. Jake, you're hoping to make some particularly powerful PC for this one, are you not?
Yeah, so, I don't often get a chance to. You have 11 levels, have fun. And a lot of times when you start off on a new campaign, you get one class, and you don't really get to plan too much ahead when it comes to multi-classing. One of my favorite things about one-shots, high-powered one-shots specifically, have fun with the building, and that's what I'm here for.
Yeah, I don't normally. I can play more in a one-shot. I can say, oh, I really want to try something bizarre.
Like maybe a triple-classed character.
Triple-classed character, for example. I wouldn't do that in a campaign because there's so much time that you'll spend in these awkward points that I feel like I'm a little bit more optimized in building a character for that. But for a one-shot, I'm like, I don't have to go through that weird moment where I've got first level in one class, second level in another, and first and a third. I don't have to do that. So it feels a lot better to do crazy multi-classing or maybe builds that may not work as well for one-shots.
Now, it's kind of funny you mentioned something, Jake, and I'm going to speak for Connor, who's not here right now. For those of you who may not remember, Connor is the player of Laurentius Thorn.
Oh, well, not.
He normally sits here.
Normally, Connor sits where Victoria is. But you mentioned that when you play, you like to kind of think about the now. You're picking the current level, maybe the next level.
Yeah.
I can tell you from experience, both for myself and also talking with Connor when we start making characters for long campaigns, we have maybe 10 to 20 levels of, we might do this. Like, we might make multiple paths. We know the story could take us different directions. But creating what could this build to in 20 levels is something that some players end up doing. It's not required. It doesn't make you a better player. It's just it's a mechanical way of thinking.
My first multi-class character was my 3-class character that I used for one shot. I'm so resistant to multi-classing normally.
We had
hard to get
one of our big fans, one of our wonderful people in our community here, Caitlin, was actually in that one shot, which some of my favorite one-shots PCs we've had were there. I'd love to see them make a reappearance, maybe in a home game, maybe here on the channel.
I'd play her again, for sure. That was so much fun.
Clella also has a PC that they've played in that one-shot, who actually is not the first appearance of that PC, so it was the second time using them. Now, before we go into the last session, we got lots of stuff that happened last session. It was a little bit silly, a little bit off the wall, some pretty cool, I'd say, homebrew monsters happening there. Yeah. I do want to thank two people in particular, two incredibly supportive members of our community. First things first, I want to thank our first Tier 2 subscriber, Pause. You've been here a whole bunch. We really appreciate you coming by, watching the show.
They were also our first sub.
Oh my gosh, you're right.
Pause is also our
first sub.
It's like our first session or something.
We can say she.
Yeah.
We're not name dropping folks without talking to them first, but Pause, huge supporter of the channel, coming by, joining us in the show, asking wonderful questions here on Footnotes, and teasing relentlessly at least one of our players.
At least one.
I also want to thank someone else who has been working on some projects that I have to keep a little bit close to the vest for now. But ECAT has been working on doing some 3D printing for the channel for some terrain we might see in some future campaigns, future one-shots, maybe even non-role-playing game contexts.
Yeah.
And so there's going to be some really cool stuff coming here in the future. So I really just want to take a moment before we start with our show and just thank you. We really appreciate it. You rock.
Thank you.
Last session, you got to really start chewing into that, or digging into the meat of the bulwark. How are you guys doing?
Okay. I want to say now, that was one of our most chaotic...
Thank you.
Some of our most chaotic moments that we've had so far on stream were in that session. I loved it. I love the chaos. I thought that there was so much about that session that was so beautiful. Getting to go visit the wood elves and doing the adventuring.
The hippie commune.
forest.
The nymphs.
But there were so many...
The nymphs.
There were so many cute moments, sweet moments, great travel, because sometimes in campaigns travel's kind of like waved away, and there were some moments where we really got to kind of like have some moments on the road, kind of, we're looking for somebody. But the chaos, I thrive on it, and it was so much fun for us to have this just sudden moment of, oh no, what's going on? Everybody's yelling.
And so kind of with that, you often kind of don't get to see a lot of character building or kind of characters like, what would you do in the downtime, the in-between these, and that chaoticness, the what did they just do, what did they just say, that kind of characterness that you don't hand-wave these.
Everything that happened with Krennic was wild.
Right? From the start of that little campsite and Gwenny cooking with... Making tea
the
with
salt rocks.
Yeah.
Was that even edible salt rock? Yeah, I found out actually that some salt rocks are not edible.
We had a moment of chemistry where we get to explain to Jake that salt is a term for a broader number of chemicals than just consumable sodium chloride.
I thought Na was not available, not salt. What was I supposed to know?
The other thing was, for me, I'm playing a character who's a little bit harsh. A little
Yes.
bit, not the nicest character I've ever played. I generally have played some characters that have a pretty fun side to them. I've had one other character kind of come close to this, but for the most part, I'm being pretty fun with my characters. And I got to have my moment of crawling out of the bushes.
No.
Noble woman, and my skirts are still torn. I used my the hem to bandage this guy.
yeah.
up.
Oh, you have the battle. It's like a lower. It's like a half.
You can say
thing.
battle skirt.
It's kind of a battle skirt because you have pants on as well.
Yes, I have pants on, but I was over here
Combat
ripping
pants.
fabric and trying to bandage this guy up with sticks in my hair, and I got to have a moment. And there's always that. Okay, I'm playing this character who's I guess everybody thinks that she's terrifying, but I got to have that.
There
moment.
is no evil wizard in the woods. That was said repeatedly this last session. There's no evil wizard in the woods.
I'm not
Your
evil.
life is in my hands.
But I was trying to save his life, but it turns out I'm a little creepy. But I
Ismini is a person who accidentally has a supervillain laugh. That's a good joke.
Oh yeah, no, it's we're having tacos tonight. Oh
my god!
That's literally
the face you make when you do it.
It's cute.
I should play more evil characters.
But
never again.
but even my evil person that I played in the last campaign, I played for a little bit there, one of the bad guys, and it was so much fun. But I was a little bit goofy, a little bit nutty,
you
and a
had
little bit
fun with
goofy.
it.
So I'm so glad that I personally got to have that one moment of I'm crawling out of the bushes, sticks in my hair, freaking out, and to have this moment with everybody else is going up this tree elevator, and Silas, Thorne, and I are what do we do?
No, so, and that's kind of jumping back to when you're a chaotic table, sometimes your personality bleeds into your character a little.
Yeah.
Silas is not an ADHD, mildly idiotic homeboy. I am, and Jake probably would have ripped it out. And I realized maybe looking back on it, Silas would have had the sense not to rip it out, but in that moment, I was oh god, it's sealing around the thing. Is it ever gonna leave? Just rip it out now while I can, while it's still healing. Nope.
Yes,
I made a
safety
mistake.
tips are not meant to be taken during the actual session.
Right.
Stories to D4 is not responsible for any deaths related to stags.
Right, safety corner moment. If you get stabbed by something, don't pull it out. Go find true, actual medical care and have them remove it in a controlled environment.
And
Also,
if a
don't leave
doctor,
the scene after ripping it out.
don't leave the scene. And if a doctor offers to lay on hands in order to heal your wounds, do not trust that doctor. Well, Victoria almost spitting out her beer.
Okay.
So during this last session, you all traveled to the Bulwark. You got to encounter the Wood Elves of Teyrilla. You learned that Krennic and his men had been attacked by a bunch of crazed wolves. And that afterwards, to his knowledge, it appeared that Scobrin, the massive wolf you had been sent here to hunt, had taken away and been stealing people, kidnapping them. Mm-hmm. How you feeling?
Did we ever look into that? I know
No.
we ended right on a fight.
We ended at the end of that fight, and that leads me to some of the meta conversations that I think that we'd be having at this moment.
You're absolutely allowed to have those meta talks.
So now what do we do? Do we say, hey, Scobrin, take us to where you've taken all the people, or if they're still alive?
Bark. Bark.
But it's like, hey, buddy, like, what do we do now? What do we do as a table? We're now at the point where there's so many different decisions to make. And this is something that I think every table suffers from a little bit. You have so many things to do.
Yes,
And
you're playing a sandbox.
Yeah, and you can lose sight of what to do next. So, like, we look back on our last campaign and we go, oh, wow, there's a bunch of things that we didn't get done that we wanted to do. Or, like, just narratively speaking, maybe we moved past something faster or slower than we should have. We've already had some of those moments now. I don't want this moment that's just so big to be another one that, and I think every player is guilty of it to some degree, where we just are like, okay, let's get to the next thing now.
Yeah,
Like,
no.
let's tie off some of the loose ends, but not...
So, like, there's a comment that Jake would make, and that's one of these meta moments, but, like, Silas would never bat an eye. Kind of like, the only time I saw them use a spell was when one of them was holding her off the rock. Other than that, they were burping at us.
Yes.
Were they the ones that actually, charmed the monsters, the beasts in the woods, or is there something more still going on? Silas ain't gonna bat an eye. He wants to burn the bodies. Jake also wants to burn the bodies.
And you did get to see when Scobrin went crazy.
Yeah.
Because Scobrin, after the flash of the green light, suddenly began going from whatever it was doing before, running away from hunters, to actively trying to
Yes.
slay you.
Yeah. So we did get that confirmation
There was
that there was at least that's involved. If it's the only thing or not, we don't actually know that. But it's one of those moments in the campaign where I want to kind of like come in calm and be like, okay, like here are all the questions we have answered. Here's all the questions we have left. Let's move through
Take
it.
a breath and don't yet go home.
Right. Because I do have a section. I'm using my notebook from campaign 1 now in campaign 2. And I, will nostalgically flip through my notes. And there's some places where I'm like, okay, I see that I wrote down like my personal quest. I keep a personal quest log of things I want to get done. And some of them never got check marks.
And I will say this. Well, it can be fun in something like a video game to be a completionist, to take track of every problem the world has and go around solving all of them, and then waiting to do the go kill the Giga Boss at the end. In Dungeons and Dragons, at least the way we play, it doesn't really work in that way. And so internally, I have a list of quests that I think exist. More
Right.
problems and potential solutions.
Yeah.
And what'll happen is I actually have a sort of I have a template that I use. Some of them are there's major and minor is how I like to think about things. For any of these sort of things, if they're major, sometimes if they're minor, I will put a timeline in the template. So if you don't solve, what is an example? Hypothetically speaking, you all know that there is an event called the Tournament of Blades happening in a few months.
Yeah.
That has a timeline. If the party doesn't go there, I'm allowed, because if the party doesn't influence things, I can have the world go. And so I can determine if you don't go, what happens there?
I actually...
Go ahead.
I kind of wanted to piggyback off that because I've actually had this question before. Like, in
Okay.
video games, like you said, like you have all the time in the world. The big bad sits on his throne waiting for you to arrive. In D&D, what happens if we actually do nothing for the next 4 to 5 months? In the major plot point, the killer, Oswald's killer, the artist, the one that's going after everyone. What happens if we just kind of do all the subquests, the side quests, never touch it?
You have, you're looking so far behind the screen, you're in my binder
Yeah.
for a moment.
I wish you could
I
put
have
it behind a door.
4 things that I'm considering those major themes. Now, these aren't quests that have to happen. They're not do objective A, do objective B. It's, because I think of more like a problem.
Right.
And so one of those problems you know about is Zarathal.
Yeah.
Another one is the painter. And I have checkpoints where if you do things, like what is he doing roughly right now in this project? And how long do I think it'll take? And I might think, oh, what he's working on right now may take over a month for him to get things set up. Right. You actually, to give an example, that's not a spoiler since it already happened, he had one thing he was working on is he needed money, and so he created a plot to earn money by ransoming off noblemen. And so you stopped that.
Right.
And so that problem still exists for him, and you've hindered whatever his plans might be.
And so his timeline slowed down a little, potentially.
Right.
Maybe you've made him reckless.
So I've got a few things involved there. Number one is if you look at the pre-written modules for 5th edition Pathfinder, there are 2 types of timed events that exist in those modules. There's your heroes show up to a location and then an event fires.
A lot of villages seem to catch on fire when you roll into their taverns.
Right, a lot of
Usually
festivals happen whenever you show up, a lot of villages burn. And then the other one is in X number of days, an event happens. So there's one in particular, I don't want to share what module it's from, but it's like,
Sure.
Events will continue to happen. There's a range of time you can pre-roll or roll each day, whether or not something happens. And then at the end of that, the module says, this is what happens if it completes. And your players now are forced to do X, Y, or Z, or your module ends.
Consequences for your players lollygagging are not the same as punishing your players.
Right.
To answer Jake's question, if you all decided, hey, can we take some downtime and just take on the safest quests we can with the Defiant Smiles and just earn up some money to repair the warehouse? My answer would be yes. We'd probably end the session. We'd come back and I'd have encounter tables and all of these chances. And as time went on, you'd hear news. And if you chose not to intervene to stop that downtime, it's possible that really good or really bad things you would miss. And that's okay. I love when players make a decision or players go a direction and it means that I have to take this section of notes that I thought was going to happen and throw it away. I can repurpose certain encounters, or it might mean, hey, they liked this. What can I take from the direction they went to learn what my players are actually interested in?
It's part of that, the DM is building the world, the players are in it and interacting and building it too. And so us doing or not doing certain things is going to naturally impact the world. It's not like, oh, I didn't buy flour on Tuesday at 4 p.m. It's like, oh, I've got, I didn't stop this bad guy or didn't do this thing. And to wrap back around to personal quests, it wasn't like me keeping track of literally everything the party needed to do, but it was like, what does my character, myself, care about? I tried to keep track of big plot threads too. But I would say my sisters are gone. Let me go find my sisters. And there's this particular bad guy that I really hate. So top of my list is let's go kill the bad guy.
Kill the evil bard.
Kill the evil bard. But it's hard as a player coming from the video game world. Because you do want to do literally everything. Every time there's an old person crossing the road, you want to go help them get across so a carriage doesn't strike them.
What item do I get from this is even if that's not it, you want to finish it, you want to get the reward, and eventually you find a magic dagger because you helped a lady across the road. I don't want to miss the magic dagger.
I want to see something for my players. I have 2 sort of questions that are kind of leading to both of you. First, kind of relating to what Jake said, is that you talk about in the game, it's very easy to think about, I'm doing this because of the reward. You're doing this quest in the Bulwark right now, and I know Silas has his own motivations. You, Jake, how motivated by the actual reward that I offered you are you?
So that's actually really, and I think this is mostly because I have been a video game player all my life, that heal all the party, best potion in the game, collects dust in my bag, and I forget to use it until the end of the, not even until the end.
Do you remember what your reward was?
Contest. No, because
that's awesome.
We got 50 platinum up front. I recognize and respect that. Other than that, Silas isn't really too worried about that. Gwenny's probably going to get herself killed if he doesn't follow. Am I wrong, though?
You got more gold than that.
That's fair. I do like gold. But
you also were promised a magical piece, an enchanted piece of jewelry.
Yes.
From the collection of the master of Mr. Whitaker. now I would say not friend, but certainly a positive acquaintance of the party.
Yeah.
Maybe I am a little
What
bit
about
more interested
you, Victoria? Are you more motivated, like you as a player, not you as Meanie? Are you more motivated by I want to get that treasure, or are you just in this quest? It's fine either way.
I'm pretty split because part of me is like, if I do the quest, I get the money. If I get the money, I get new spells, and that's like a large part of it. Because I'm like, I'm dumping my money into learning spells.
Because you can actually, it is kind of nice that your gold is like getting an item.
Right.
Yeah, it's more than just a number. It's a tangible. I hit this amount of gold. I create I can cast fireball.
I can shoot lightning from my fingers if someone passes me a 20.
Right.
Right.
And so that's a very large motivation. And then also, when there's a moment in the campaign that feels like a very big story moment. So, for example, a whole bunch of people from Elts are all going into the woods to go hunt down the big bad wolf. I want to go and be there because I want to see that happening. I would truly, as a player, have said, I'm going to just send Squawk. Like, if I had, like, the large range of, like, Find Familiar or a flock of familiars on the regular familiar because they're a mile out, then I would be like, I'm just going to go watch. Like, if we're not going, then I'll take a day of downtime and just go watch what everybody's doing because that kind of story arc is interesting for me as a player.
I have a whole page of the names of the people who were involved in this great hunt.
So, Tama, would you say you might have, like, something like player FOMO, fear of missing out,
Yes.
where, like, Matt drops...
I have not thought about player FOMO.
I have major player FOMO about a lot of things. There's been a lot of events that that we didn't end up doing because of the whole player disorganization thing that we talked about earlier, where we all were so excited about so many things. And then there's also been an active decision not to go do something, and I have regretted it every time. But we would be playing the same campaign for 18 years if we did everything I wanted to do.
Exactly.
If we hadn't done Stories to D4, we've talked a little bit about it. There was a very real possibility that the campaign that we would next create would have a progression, like a mechanical level progression that would go up to probably about level 5 or 6 at my normal pace, and then slow to a crawl because we would be happy playing a campaign for years.
Yes.
Now, as a show, I don't think it works necessarily as much as a show to get into the level of minutia a campaign intended for 5 years, 10 years would be.
Right.
So reading between the lines, we hit level 6.
You are not level 6.
No, we're not level 6.
You are ways away. Now, I don't use experience, but I also use experience. I do track how many of these major encounters, roughly their CR. In this case, fighting Scobrin, there were two. Do you want to? Can I kind of explain the mechanics of this?
Yeah.
Yes.
There were three ways. There were 3 ways to really end this encounter. The third one you didn't really get close to, so I'm not going to bother with that. But the 2 obvious ones were by actually defeating Scobrin, rendering him unconscious, the giant wolf. You would have been able to, at the very least, subdue the creature and end the encounter. That was one way to succeed. Another way was by breaking the enchantment that caused Scobrin to fight you. And Scobrin was very powerful. Scobrin only used the most basic abilities because he was mad. Scobrin, without fury, is more powerful than the encounter you had.
I want everybody to know that Remove Curse is a spell I almost took but didn't.
Would this account
Remove Curse would have worked.
Yep. That's what I was thinking. I even went through my binder 4 times before we started. Like, where is it?
Now,
Where is it?
I will say,
meta.
it is a Remove Curse I would have allowed to work. It is more accurate to say that Dispel Magic would have been the correct spell.
I realized that after the combat. Before the combat, I was in there looking for Remove Curse because I thought I took it to fix Thorn. I actually was just going to fully take a spell at my level up just to fix Thorn.
I think that you need therapy to fix Thorn.
Probably.
His family did die.
I have been waiting for this encounter for quite some time. There were 2 big things. Yes, it's really cool to throw a big monster. You love them, getting a big miniature, the custom paint job all on it's fun. But those little boys, those strange soldiers, are a custom homebrew stat block I've been waiting to show you for quite some time.
You've had some really fun monsters lately.
Yep.
They're...
The Nilbog.
I mean, I'm gonna bring it up. I have, in the past probably 2 to 3 weeks sent you, hey, this monster's fun, this monster's cool, and I haven't sent you more than, 5. 2 of the 5 popped up, and I know you as a DM. You probably, went,
I already had the miniatures.
No, exactly. I know you as a DM. You have had this entire, story arc, this entire section, planned for 2 to 3 months now, maybe?
the Great Hunt and the Bulwark roughly was planned in November. So it was planned after we started the campaign, but Scobrin, as a basic idea, but without a name, has existed since before the campaign started.
Point being, you plan ahead. So I know it was just like crazy how I was like, hey, this is a cute little like reverse goblin, and it pops up. Or like the other day I was like, I have never seen in any of my campaigns a gibbering mouth. Like they don't seem crazy cool, but like I just lick their mouths.
Hey.
And here they come up.
So, much like how in the 80s, wearing a leather jacket would just make you cooler, you, our dear audience, who comes here for not just the sessions, but also for Footnotes, are quite a bit cooler than any of your peers. I have a special secret scoop here. Yes, Victoria. I went with leather jackets for this metaphor.
We both are struggling.
I have a secret. One of my players said, I think this would be a cool monster when talking about the gibbering mouther. And so I put it into an encounter. It was that simple, Jake.
I liked them.
Now, the Nilbog, totally a coincidence. This one? No, I just was like, yeah. I had planned on strange soldiers and minor creepy monster. I hadn't picked a... What are they bringing as their pet that they're using to fight you?
So, this is actually kind of a D&D from your perspective question.
Sure.
The Nilbog was not hard, but more unique to fight against. Like, we had to, for example, you couldn't hit him just once in a turn. You have to kind of, like...
You had to double tap him or you weren't going to get through.
I know you used a custom stat block, but if you didn't have one...
I changed health and armor class and nothing else.
Fair. 2, 3, 5.
Oh, and gave it spellcasting. I did give it spellcasting. So, minor thing, access to third level magic.
Yeah,
Oh, that's just
not
small.
a big deal.
Half the team doesn't have it. But, like, that said, like... At what level do you think that becomes convoluted? Like, if you had not just one, because that was fun for one encounter with some sprinkling of, like, wolves in it. If you didn't have the wolves, if you had more Nilbogs, would we have died there? Because, like, I was looking at that thing, and I'm not convinced we wouldn't have had more trouble.
The custom Nilbog that I built roughly equated to a CR 6 creature. Absolutely an appropriate challenge for the party. Given that there was a war elephant and I limited what features it would use of itself.
Fair.
Somewhere between CR5 and CR7. So I did not expect a player death, but I thought this is going to be relatively challenging. This might be a 5-round combat, and use up some of their resources because all of this last session, actually the past 2 sessions and next session, all take place in one day. So that's one thing about D&D is that time is a little bit slower.
You keep track of your hit dice.
Yes.
Well, I mean, it's going to be 12 hours of play in one day.
Right. It's not, but the thing is, it's weeks between.
Yeah.
And so with the Nilbog, I wouldn't actually just say, I'm going to throw 4 of these at you. The stat block was customized for, what if there was a strong Nilbog that was roughly the challenge for the party? There are enemies I'll throw at you that are not balanced for you, but in a Francis, or Sicknarf, as he is when he's in Nilbog, was not a campaign level threat. He wasn't a main character. And so balancing it for the party, even though it's part of the game, there is always this meta standpoint. And I guess I should ask how you as players feel about this. Sometimes I make encounters that are balanced for you. Sometimes I put in a threat here and say, if you guys want to try to deal with it, figure it out.
Yeah, that's how we're going to fight, defeat, and send the vigilantes to jail.
The biggest example of this I think I've ever done, one of the most... We're going to get to vigilantes in jail. One of the big examples I've had in a previous campaign was throwing an incredibly powerful sorceress dragon, putting it in a castle, filling it with all sorts of minions and such, and letting my players have intelligence about what was coming forwards. And you all came up with levitate vats of acid, bring reinforcements from a nearby town. You solved the puzzle,
Right.
but leading to a doable encounter.
That's actually something that I'm having some fun with in this campaign. So, our table, we're kind of habitual overplanners.
Yes.
Don't worry, we only enact half of the plans we talked
Right,
about.
that's the problem too. But I was I'm gonna throw it out there and say that I'm sure that there are a lot of tables that do the same thing, where we plan a lot and then do nothing that we plan, or very
Look,
little.
when
of
you
it.
get 10 spells that do all sorts of crazy effects, you're going to have, like, what options do I have? And option paralysis is something I've seen in more than one table that I play D&D.
Decision
It's
paralysis is
hard.
so difficult.
ECAT, you're exactly right. Nilbog is goblin spelled backwards, which is why Sicknarf, it was his name, because Francis was the actual name of the goblin.
How did I know that Goblin backwards was Nilbog? But how did I not catch the Francis thing? I'm actually a little upset at myself for that one.
So
Technically, Signarf never introduced himself. I just felt happy just using his name. It wasn't meant as a mystery.
what I just wanted to say to finish that out, though, was as we play in a campaign, we get to know each other better as characters at the table. We kind of figure out, like, okay, this is what this person does. So, example, you have a bard and they're handing out bardic inspiration to people. You're going to throw out your hardest hitters, or your people who are attacking multiple times, or can crit on certain, like, there's different things, different people you send that bard inspiration die to.
Yeah.
If you're a wizard, there's certain people that you may want to, protect or buff, or certain types of enemies you debuff. And as a party, we're kind of learning each other's abilities. So there's a certain point in the campaign where it's even less that we're planning things out and more that we just kind of understand what the other person is doing enough to know how to best support them. Less spoken, understanding. So, we may not, I would never have sat there and told everybody, okay, I'm going to give bardic inspiration primarily to these 3 people, unless that certain things are happening, and then I'm going to use this other ability to help certain people out.
I sort of like the Gloomhaven approach to general, you go do your thing, I'm going to support this person this round, rather than telling someone a little bit too much during your turn, or during their turn, can sort of feel like you're piloting them.
Right. But throughout our campaign, we had people who came in and out of the party, or came into the party, and we were able to figure out how they fit in. And as we continue to play together as players, we're learning each other's play styles more. I'm very excited for this party because I can see the beginnings of us understanding what the other people are really up to.
This is a very powerful party.
It is a very strong party.
You are now 5th level, which means you are at the point where you are individually significantly more powerful than any average person.
Yeah.
This encounter with Sicknarf was a big one. I would say was one of the more difficult encounters. Even though you all handled it well, it took a lot of resources. I believe Ismini and Nim were both nearly depleted.
We both were at,
L was very low as well, I believe.
Oh, yeah.
Silas had a hard time getting into the fight. Now, you didn't take a lot of damage.
Do anything. He was on an elephant, then he was on the other side of the map. Silas can do a lot, but when it comes to walking, these trunk legs will only take you so far.
But
we should have been putting melee people on the elephant to come in closer to me.
There were a couple of things that came out during this fight that are about all sorts of different stuff that'll actually kind of help tonight with footnotes. Jake, I believe you asked about Warlock Tiles. You wanted to talk about them tonight.
Yes. So I thought what you did, and this was so simple, so silly, you pulled the piece off to say, oh, this part of the terrain's broken. I was like, how convenient is that as a D&D thing?
So we recently started collecting these for the campaign. We don't have all the sets quite yet, but we've got a very good selection. So if you're ever looking for dungeon tiles, we'd be more than happy to tell you about the different sets. And so Warlock Tiles they're made of hard plastic, and they are a modular set of dungeon tiles. Generally speaking, they're 2 inch by 2 inch and therefore 2 square by 2 square pieces with these small little soft plastic clips that easily slot in and because there's holes in each side, allow them to connect. So I can pretty quickly throw something together. And now, generally, they come in 3 main types right now. They come in streets, so city streets, alleyways, that sort of thing. They come in dungeon stone, so cobblestone if you need to use it that way, or perhaps a cellar. And finally, they come in wood boards, something like an inn, or really just any old building.
Yeah, and some of the sets are reversible, so you've got the stone and then the wood on the other side.
Right. And recently, they've come out with things like they have angled pieces, so triangle shapes, so they allow you to build slanted lines, as well as curved shapes to allow you to build circles and arcs, such as a castle turret or a tower, as I used them in this last session. Now, Jake had a great point. Because was it the players who blew up a piece of terrain?
It was
Sicknar.
Shatter.
Shatter.
Shatter. It was his meanie.
Yep.
The evil wizard decided to actually blow up quite a bit of unattended terrain, and because these ruins I described as being quite decrepit, I thought it appropriate to actually shatter a piece of the terrain.
Because shatter itself as a spell damages objects around.
Yes, and it was 20 damage, or 20 plus, which was enough to actually break a nearby section of damaged stone, giving players walkway. Similarly, if Silas had decided to attack a walkway, I would have allowed you to actually break the terrain, and with something like Warlock Tiles, it becomes quite easy. Now,
You should break terrain more often.
I would say Warlock Tiles are now essentially one of the big 3 options for home terrain, or I guess 4 if I have to go to 4. You can always create your own. If you're someone who likes doing craft projects, it is an option.
There's a lot of great channels for it.
There are a lot of wonderful channels. Black Magic Craft on YouTube,
Craft.
one of our personal favorites for where we've learned a lot actually.
About how to make all sorts of different pieces of terrain, functional, modular, the big set dressings.
Warlock Tiles are up there, of course. Now, the creme de la creme, if you have the budget for it, they are phenomenal. They've got some incredibly talented artists and sculptors and everyone on the team at Dwarven Forge. Makes very fancy terrain. We have some Dwarven Forge for caverns and for sewers. I'm hoping to get some more Dwarven Forge here on the channel. Possibly after the Battle Spear, we'll work towards something like that.
Yeah.
Warlock Tiles are considerably cheaper. But they are currently limited to certain contexts. But since we decided on a city campaign, Warlock Tiles are perfect as we have buildings, dungeons, streets, which is most of the city. And we have our Dwarven Forge for our caves beneath the city, our sewers. You're going to keep seeing those sewer tiles because I've established Elves has a series of servant tunnels and sewers and secret passageways.
Can be relevant. It's camping.
Yeah, I purchased tiles because they're useful for specifically what we're doing. Also, ECAT, like you mentioned, this is the other big thing, is that 3D printing, if you have access to a printer, or if you'd like to pay one of the many people who offer printing services online or in actual physical stores, 3D printing is also an option. It is a lot of work, but the results are very customizable in terms of scale and fidelity. Some of them require painting, which Victoria and I love to paint. But if you don't, then something like Warlock Tiles and Dwarven Forge, which both have options to come painted, are very easy.
The part about the Warlock Tiles that I found very impressive was they do have some connector pieces to slot into other formats.
Yes, they have conversion kits.
They have, and even some of their big box sets come with some of the little pieces that are the Warlock 2 other system connectors.
And now, we're not sponsored by any of these folks. We don't actually have any sponsorships here on the channel at the moment. I believe, so I apologize, and we'll note in the Discord if this is incorrect. I actually believe the updated Warlock Easy clips were created in such a way where they work with a couple more types of sets. Not every set, of course, but there are other interlocking grid-style dungeon tiles that now work with these softer plastics. Don't use if you get Warlock Tiles, buy the Easy clips. The regular clips they're fine. The Easy clips are a massive improvement.
Yeah, you feel like, oh, okay, this is just easy to do. But
I don't know if I could break it.
Yeah, the greatest thing is to say, oh, I bought the Warlock Tiles streets because I didn't have streets, but I've got all this building from another set that they're compatible with. It's great. And since we play on a 1-inch grid in Dungeons & Dragons, generally speaking, it's, if every piece of terrain out there is built in a 1-inch grid, even if you can't perfectly lock them all together, they are going to be the same sizing, same scale.
I suppose I should mention, if you're someone who's comfortable with painting, an option that is relatively cheaper than 3D printing, but requires a bit more assembly, is Mdf Laser-Cut Terrain. And so and it's typically laser cut, but these essentially pieces of pressboard of just wood are glued together using wood glue, and there's a number of incredibly talented artists out there. We've seen lots of Etsy stores. This is terrain that we use in our home games for Star Wars Legion as well as for Warhammer 40,000.
Now, these kind of pieces, these are all individually separate pieces of wood that we had to glue together. At the top of this building, each one of these is an individual separate piece of wood.
That was probably 25 pieces of wood that you're holding.
Right here.
But this entire kit was very cheap.
Yeah, it takes time. Turn on something you don't need to watch, but you can just listen to, do a podcast, do an audio.
Stand-up comedy.
do a podcast or an audiobook, and just go to town building. There's some great sets out there.
So basically what we're saying is you never need to have physical terrain to play Dungeons and Dragons. But if you would like to do, if you don't mind spending a bit of money, if you're able to, and you're interested, there are lots of options out there, and you really should talk to your players to figure out what works best. I want to get some verticality in our games. That's something I would really like.
Can I learn the spell fly first? I'll never learn the spell fly.
If you would like to learn the spell fly, that's great. We'll need to get some flight stands, which are these acrylic plastic bases with a column. Oh, I'd let you learn fly. Just give me 5 levels of a full casting class or 10 levels of a half casting class.
That
I have
was
someone that can cast fly for me.
Yeah.
cast fly on you. Just kidding.
It would be really effective on
It'd
silence.
be really effective on silence.
When elephants fly.
When elephants fly, and it'll happen.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm gonna say I love talking through all of these pieces, but the nostalgia factor of like a DM pulling out a battle map and like just drawing something on it, like that is where we all started and learned. Like, while this is still
I've drawn a lot
the
of battle
best-
maps for our table.
Exactly, and that's just like, if you do that at home, you know the feeling. It's just something fun and interactive too. So like, while this is still like, and I'm gonna hype it up, one of the coolest things I've ever seen. If I go home, play a D&D session, and there's a battle map in front of me, I'm still gonna be pretty dang happy.
Absolutely. I think it was it was our second or third footnotes. We had someone on and we talked about what you need to play Dungeons and Dragons. We had some wonderful folks in chat who were asking questions and were new to D&D. But you can play D&D. The only expense I think is required is purchasing 1 set of dice. You can do this for less than $5 at some stores. Typically, 10 or less is very easy to find. 1 set of dice, paper, pencil, ideally an internet connection to look up a couple of basic rules while you're learning. You're good to go. All of this is extra stuff that if you and your players enjoy, or perhaps if you're running an online D&D show, it makes it a little bit easier and also helps with certain types of effects.
A great session we had was we had two friends come over, and we all said, "Oh, do you want to play Dungeons and Dragons?" So you threw some stuff together. We grabbed out some notebook paper, wrote out like little character sheets. We're on our phones, kind of like digging around trying to find stuff, and it was. We talk about that session still.
You had to surf down a mountain.
No, that was a different one.
You
That was
have
also
a lot of
improvised.
shots.
It was a trumpet session.
Trumpet, the Vault of Thorns.
Yeah, so it was it was just one of those things that, there's so many ways to play Dungeons and Dragons. There's the online Roll20. There's all the combats in your mind. So there's no miniatures, no moving on the grid, but all of it's great. I think that there's always a case for any style of play.
Absolutely. And so, Jake, I will continue making different and creative sorts of battle mats for you, and I will keep throwing monsters at you that intend to eat your face, your elephanty face. The trunk is the softest part.
So I'm always happy when you say, like, this is a Silas person. Oh, wait a second. I just caught what you said. No.
No, I was thinking about one of the nightmares I had about Silas.
Oh my god!
Why do you have nightmares about
No,
Silas?
we have to move. We absolutely must move on from that. From nightmares?
Yeah.
Okay, share your dreams.
No.
love.
Ooh.
No, he got his nose cut off.
I actually asked this once. Would greater restoration restore Silas's
No.
nose?
Regeneration.
Regeneration. You lost a body part. Like if you lose an arm, you gotta use regeneration.
Losing an
Okay.
arm is a massive thing to fix. There are very few clerics in Elts who can cast that spell.
Should have gone cleric.
No, that's me. We're gonna fight it. We're gonna be like,
Cleric is my class. Get off.
fight.
Go away. It's mine.
Okay.
So you actually made this comment about, like, you and Connor, you start characters, you build them to 20. I can't do that because Silas, if he was gonna, like, multi-class, I was gonna dip into cleric. Now that I've played him, now that I've lived as Silas is never gonna be a cleric.
I can see Silas being a paladin.
Paladin or something else, like, probably actually maybe not even multi-class, I'm not entirely sure, but as, like, he's grown, he would never be necessarily, like, devout as in a cleric. He would be devout as in he has...
Because not
the
every
walls.
priest is a cleric.
Mm-hmm.
The level of, at least in our setting, how we've used them, the level of devotion of clerics is something where it is the fundamental core of who that person is, in most respects. At least for a lot of deities, a person who's a cleric does not go a day without it be talking about their god, evangelizing or having some sort of ritualistic thing for that deity.
I would
Look at
say,
these toys out of my hand.
yeah, you're having fun with those Warlock Tiles. I guess, okay. I've said it before on this stream, I'll say it again, but I'm trying to get better about it, that I'm very, superstitious whenever it comes to creating backup characters. But, like, the more I think about it, the more I really want to build one and just have it done so that if anything happens, I'm not spending a full week both mourning the loss of my character and also trying to create their replacement.
Oh, that would be hard.
Right.
Oh, when one of you dies, I'm sure there will be agonizing up until that Friday, and so I'll be painting up a miniature that Friday.
That's why I feel like I need to do it now. Just in case for my dear DM. Or actually, no. I should punish the DM to make it harder for him to kill me.
One thing that we
Actually, yes, literally, that's what Silas is. Like, Matt will never get rid of Silas, so I'll never need a backup character.
We did have a question on our Discord, or rather from one of the people on Discord, asking about what donations, what bits, what all of the different ways that people can support us, what those go to. Mm-hmm. And one of the ones we've discussed is actually that for players to have access to a backup character that we could then commission artwork and get a miniature for. So something like you have a wonderful bright yellow Hero Forge miniature for your Loxodon, for Silas. Mm-hmm. And so getting that one thing we've talked about is in the future we might actually create these backup characters and have a miniature. And if they don't come with that campaign, we can always have them in a one-shot or in future campaigns.
This is why you have 3 backup characters.
That's too many backup characters, Jake. We want to do the Battlesphere one-shot.
I literally nixed one of my backup characters just today.
You did today.
Building a new one.
We did mention... we've talked about this with everyone as they've come and done their first Footnotes of the year. Mm-hmm. Silas, looking forward about Silas. Also looking forward about Jake and stories. Do you have any hopes? Do you have any goals? Do you have things you'd like to happen?
Silas is an interesting ask because Silas will always be driven by like his own moral of this is what I should be doing, which meets lawful and good together, or at least how I try to pilot Silas. From the get-go, Silas's job at the start of this campaign was getting Oswald and his stuff to Elves. Obviously, Silas failed at that job. Dun dun. I got his stuff to Elves. Now what do I do? The entire time it's been this kind of, what does Silas do? It's just he stay around because Gwenny is now kind of becoming this up-and-coming adventurer. And, like, I think Silas's, and my own personal problem with piloting Silas is that he enjoys and likes being this, like, he's a support. He is, like, sure, he is going to be one of the heroes, but he's not the one the Bard's going to write about.
You still call her Gwynny when you're out of character, and I love it.
I can't not. She's just little Gwenny.
She's little Gwynny.
If I had to say there was a goal for Silas, it's not necessarily vengeance, but, like, to an extent, justice. Like, not... Oswald's already dead, and Silas recognizes that.
You had an offer for to train to become a knight, potentially.
He could, but there's so much that he would have to stop in the moment. He wouldn't be able to keep Gwenny from setting herself on fire. Jokes aside, like, there's still an obligation I have as someone that is directly tied to Oswald to helping his
also,
after effects.
You also committed to the Defiant Smiles.
Oh, I do. I have a job now. I forgot about that.
And the question I've been asking people is, looking back over the last year in the campaign, what's kind of been your standout moments, your standout events? Ooh. What stands out for you against the backdrop of September all the way to January 1st of the campaign?
This sounds weird. It's not necessarily a standout event. It's a standout action.
Ooh.
I say, let's not do that a lot, I feel like Silas is the first to say, let's take them to the guards. The first to do something like that. And, like, if I had to say Silas's standout, it's that I think he's going to end up having, and has had, butting heads with the party. And, like, as trying to be agreeable and supportive as he is, like, I built Silas to be stubborn, too.
We're both lawful.
And exactly, like, how do we get along? Like, Matt, we talked about this for a second, like, there's the word knighthood has been dropped around Silas. I think what kind of Silas would have done in that situation is, like, that's a great option, but I could not hang out with Ismini if I went to become a knight. And I have had that conversation with myself as well as a player.
I'm not evil!
You aren't, but you definitely teeter the lines of right and wrong, lawful.
So,
I have a strict moral code.
the big thing is that because Silas does not seem to have an opinion about Chalcedonia, about the Elven kingdoms.
Oh yeah, he would probably not jump through hoops.
Right. So it's hard. Sometimes Silas isn't realizing that, or isn't necessarily caring about that. Ismini is focused on how do I maintain the integrity of the Summer Elves? How do I protect Chalcedonia? What's the right thing for the families?
And I'll be honest, like, we understand the importance of Elle, but Elle is a noblewoman. In Silas's eyes, she is a step above Ismini. Ismini should be having kind of this similar treatment, and it's so weird because I don't think Ismini or Elle has taken the time to really explain things. Like, obviously, I know about the House of Summer and like the Fall of Silas, but like, how is Ismini not almost just as important as a high society member herself?
From a meta standpoint,
Yeah.
this is something that's public information. I believe was actually listed in one of our character descriptions we've done.
Yeah.
Ismini's older sister is a baroness.
Yeah.
Yes. Isn't she supposed to be important?
This is a noblewoman right here.
Yes.
And she acts so much more like a noblewoman than Elle, so it's kind of hard not to turn that off.
Yeah, you are correct. Elilie has a very different relationship with
Nobility.
her stances. Yes, nobility and her stance in society, her place in society, than Ismini does. Ismini takes a subservient role, but takes it seriously because it's her role as a noble.
Right. So
Yeah.
to the outside world, people would look at Elle and Ismini and be like, well, you're both nobles.
Well, exactly, and it almost feels more like, and this sounds weird, if I was outside looking in and didn't know the intricate details, I would say that you're like her older cousin. You're just trying to make sure she doesn't die because she's kind of reckless.
You've literally been told Ismini is both older than Elle and has been watching Elle for years.
Yeah. Like 7 years old, I think.
Since you were about
or she
7?
was?
Yeah. So I was.
Oh, Elle was full on not... full on a
It
child.
was a 5.
Yeah.
It was 5 because Elle still wasn't walking. I think
Right.
we discussed.
Because it was the first tournament of Blades that you went to is where you first met Elle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it has been Ismini's literal entire life being told, you watch Elle.
It's fair.
You keep Elle out of trouble, you watch Elle.
How many white hairs do you already have as Mini?
My entire head is
I
white
will say
hair.
one common ground it doesn't seem that your characters have ever met on that I wonder if will ever come up is that Silas has grown up protecting two crazy goofballs, Gwynwyn Grenfear and Chester Piffle.
The difference is I can't physically protect Elle. It
That's
looks
kinda
different.
fair.
It looks different. I've mostly been socially protecting Elle or trying to find ways out of sticky situations or maybe using a little bit of magic to help.
This
I
sounds-
can't put myself physically in the way without me dying as well, which
You can't bait and switch.
Yeah, which partially gets rid of the whole point of my entire life is supposed to be served, unless I have to in that moment to make sure that Elle, like if one of us has to die, it's going to be Ismini.
Yeah.
But it's different for Silas because Silas can be like, oh, I'm 5 feet taller than Gwynwyn. I'm going to go, not really.
I'm gonna
but-
pick her up and yank her back.
Right.
Well, and I kind of see that as weird as it sounds with some of our building picks as well. Like specifically, a subclass feature of yours is using that ward. I can't physically step in front of her, but I can magically step in front of her.
Yep.
Silas can, so bait and switch. So like, I see a lot of like, it's fun whenever we take what our characters are, what our motivations are, and we don't just make them about like our personality. We also see how we can make them as actual options in game too.
It's almost like the character concepts ended up having some theming that happened. I don't know how they happened because your players didn't get to talk to each other until they had some level of concept. Theming.
I feel
Yeah,
misled.
Huh? Do you feel misled? No, in actuality, I will say, I think your characters have been doing the conflict between them, which isn't antagonistic, but there's differing motives, I think has helped the story, has helped where the campaign is going, and I'm really excited to see where it goes. We are almost out of time, though, tonight.
Do we have to be?
We could choose not to be.
Can we talk about what else real quick?
Oh yeah, we didn't touch
Let's
that.
talk about
That was
Tayrilla.
So crazy.
We almost spent 3 whole years playing in the same campaign, like about 3 years playing, same campaign, never once visited Wood Elves.
Yeah.
No, Wood Elf settlements are very separated from the societies you traveled in before.
They're hippies.
They are.
They're
I
hippies.
did not anticipate what I guess we saw through Elle first, but even when we got up there, like, I will be honest, I was covered.
Elle is
in-
not a Wood Elf.
Oh no!
Okay.
I know. Like what we saw there was her interactions first and foremost, because we were on the ground. But even then, I was like going up there covered in blood as Silas, and I was like, "This is not a good look." And then they were just like, "Are you okay? Do you need help?" And I was like,
A reminder for everybody watching at this table and directed specifically at the three of us, because we were the ones that were down there being covered in blood. Thorn has prestidigitation. He could have cleaned you up before you went up there.
Thorn does not respect your authority.
Kind of fair.
I'm speaking for Connor, and Connor will agree with me. Thorn does not respect your authority.
He did use prestidigitation not long before to make it taste better.
And I wanted to say it, but again, circle back to the beginning of Footnotes, we were all so chaotic at the time, I couldn't be like, Thorn, clean up Silas, because we had a guy dying in front of us, so it didn't seem important.
No, that entire endeavor started with like, oh, this hurt man is coming out of the brush. And
they hog-tied him and put him upstairs.
It's so far downhill. Oh yeah, we stuffed like a vine in his mouth, took him upstairs, and like he was blinded at that point too. We will probably not have the best relationship with that man walking away, but we're gonna protect his elephant and return it to him.
You saved his life.
Yeah.
You took
Not his liver.
One of the 4 captains of Elts and helped carry him over the shoulders of an old woman and blind him. Let's see which one is it going to be pride, or is it going to be like some sort of amount of empathy? What's going to win out here?
He's going to be too prideful, and we're all going to get murdered by the guards in the middle of the night in our sleep.
Our warehouse is going to burn down.
Our warehouse is going to
We haven't even
mysteriously
paid
burn
off our
down.
mortgage.
I'm so sorry. We're here to do a structural audit of your home. I'm sorry. You have to let the engineers in. We have the paperwork.
You would not.
Is it up to
bring
code?
this
No.
into-
No.
It's not up to any code.
If you pay Silas, we can get up to code.
The other thing that I would say about that is, gosh, the chaos of it.
It was so fun though too.
Definitely one of those sessions where a bunch of things started happening that nobody expected.
Right, and the thing, and we talk about the chaos and the fun, it snowballed is what I was trying to say. Like, it started somewhere, and then I blinked, and Silas basically just ran away from the situation and left. Did you just get a cat?
She was yelling.
She was yelling.
She came to say goodnight.
Oh, but it just, and that's what I love about D&D, and like, not always, you're a player, you're a person, you're gonna bring your own self into it no matter what, but like, that chaotic moment, those funs, like, it started with you crawling out of a bush and ended with you, like, hovering over a man. We'll save you.
I'm not that evil.
The Asmini miscommunications, I think, are a funny recurring gag that you're a little scarier than you think you are.
I guess I'm a little scarier than I think I am because I'm over here like, this is totally normal.
A well put together person is naturally scary. A well put together rich lady who can, evil cast magic is also a little scary.
You're a witch.
I can cause people to be scared of me with my own brain.
You cast the spell fair. That's kind of
Yeah. But the
Do we have any words of wisdom for our wonderful audience before we sign off tonight?
roll some dice.
Roll some dice.
Got
If
some
someone
fun.
gets stabbed, leave it in.
If somebody gets stabbed, leave the implement inside of them and get them to actual medical care.
Oh, and salt isn't always edible.
Salt, not all salts are edible.
Okay, I think that was good.
We did it?
Yeah.
We did it. So, also, don't stab people.
Also, don't stab people.
Don't stab people. If you do get stabbed, don't pull it out. Don't unstab yourself, and roll some dice. If you have a chance, find some folks in your local area that you're able to play. Maybe go online. Play some tabletop RPGs. They're great. If you want some recommendations, you have some questions about the game, come back here on Sundays for Footnotes. We're happy to help you on your tabletop journey. Good night, everyone. We're glad you joined us at the table, and we'll see you this Friday for the next session of Stories to D4. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Oh.
Yeah, there we go. Wait a second.
Oh no! What have I done?
I think we're prolonging the show. No, we're not prolonging the show.
This has been
Matt.